everybody. Today's video we're going to kick off the holiday season with my favorite design I think of this year. Why, go big or go home. So this one is a Grinch arm that comes up off the nail, and it's the Grinch hand that's holding on to the ornament that is broken. I love this one. I love this one so very much. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. If you are Grinch fanatics like we are, there are several other Grinch videos planned for this year, so keep coming back and check the description box for all my previous Grinch videos because there are so many. If you love Grinch, this is the place to be. I hope you guys like it, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
I'm going to begin with a small round nail tip. This is my smallest nail tip that I have, besides it's actually even longer than my nails that I usually keep them, but it's the shortest, just full cover nail tip. I'm going to apply an overlay of a red color acrylic, and I am not going to worry about filing this. I'm just going to be like, okay, step one done. Then I round a plastic drinking straw. I'm going to sculpt the Grinch's arm. So it's very pointed. It's like a triangle that comes together at the very end to make a full circle. This shape doesn't have to be perfect, but that's approximately what it is. Then I'm going to slide that off the straw, and then I'm going to file it if it needs to be. I'm going to fit it on the nail. Make sure it looks like the Grinch's arm is just extended off the nail. Look at it from all angles. Make sure it looks nice and straight. If anything needs to be filed or adjusted to make it straight, now's the time to do it, not later. As long as it feels like it's nicely attached, secure it to this nail on either side with some clear acrylic. Then grabbing copious amounts of the red acrylic you've been using thus far, smooth out the transition from nail to sleeve. You don't want it to look too unnatural here. You want it to just kind of flow from one thing to the next. And it's a little weird. It's definitely really weird actually at this particular stage. And just kind of go with the flow. Look at this from all angles. Make sure that, like I said, it doesn't have a weird transition. It just kind of goes from one thing to the next. I'm going to go on the underside of this as well. Make sure that that's all filled out, rounded out, smoothed out. If you do need to do any filing, once you're done with this stage, go ahead and do that as well. I was happy with mine. I was like, you know what, it's good enough for me. Then I'm going to grab white acrylic, and I'm going to be adding the furry cuff around the end of the sleeve. A nice large bead of acrylic that I'm leaving fairly thick. And then I'm going to take a dotting tool dipped into some clear acrylic powder, and I'm going to swirl it through the white acrylic to make it look furry textured. Don't overthink this, just really quickly mess up your acrylic. After that's done, flip this underneath if you weren't able to do the whole cuff in one bead, which probably is better not to, because you don't have as much working time then. But after you flip it over to do the other side, go ahead and repeat the process. Dip your dotting tool into the powder and then just swirl it through. Once that is all done and you have your cuff done and your sleeve is done, set that to the side, and on a nail form backing with green acrylic, start sculpting your Grinch hand pieces. So for the Grinch to start with, for the piece, I'm going to make his wrist. And then I'm going to, so that's going to be like his arm and his wrist, and then I'm going to make the palm of his hand separately. All of these pieces, for the most part, are going to be created separately. So I've got wrist, palm of hand. The palm of hand is, think square, but not a square. It's rounded on the one side, and then it kind of like a squarish. And then I'm going to do the thumb and the forefinger together. So these are the fingers that are pinched to hold on to the ornament. So sculpt those at the same time since they do touch. You might as well just sculpt them all together. And then after you have those two pieces done, you're going to want to sculpt the other three fingers. I laid a few beads of acrylic down at a time because this particular acrylic I'm using is slightly stickier than what I prefer to use, and it requires slightly more polymerization to make it workable. So what that means is you just have to let it set for a little longer before it'll hold its shape. So I did the first one, and then I'm going to pull the acrylic into the second finger, and I'm currently not worried about which finger's which. I just know I need three slightly different sizes of finger, and I can place them on the nail whichever way it feels the best. Grab the wrist and the forearm, and you're going to place that inside the sleeve and hold that. I put some nail glue on the end of it until it stays. And then after it stays, you're going to want to fill in the inside of that arm before you add the hand on it. Because once you add the hand on it, it's going to be much harder to get in there to be adding the rest of his wrist and his arm. So I'm going to just press that green acrylic inside there. Like I said, this one's a little stickier, so it's not the most fun one to use to be sculpting something like this, but it is definitely the best Grinch color that I have. So we're going to be taking it a nice little kind of slow and easy. So after I have the one side, I'm going to actually keep the nail in that shape with that part of the arm up, and then flip it over and do the other side. Same thing until it's cured. Keep that with that side of the arm up so that the acrylic doesn't run or move. Once you're happy with it, you're like, yep, that's going to stay how I put it. Grab the palm of the hand and you're going to glue the roundest part of it to the wrist. So it's a little square towards where the fingers are. And then after we have that part done, fill in underneath that. Same thing. The less stuff that you have attached to this, the easier it is to round it out and to fill it out. However, it is hard to add any detail much to the palm of the hand without the fingers in place, because the fingers guide the position of all of the other, all of the meaty part on the inside of your hand. So I'm going to add a nice layer, just a base layer to it, but the detail I will wait until I get to that later. Now I'm going to grab the thumb and index finger, and I'm going to be grabbing those and I'm going to be placing them on. And I'm trying to really figure out where they should be placed. It's a little tricky because your thumb has this extra bulk at the end of it, which I didn't sculpt, which I could have sculpted at the beginning, but I didn't. I figured I'd fill that in later. So there's going to be this open air gap between the thumb and the hand. And for right now, I'm okay with that. I will slowly kind of attach them. I will bridge them from the one section to the other. This is where that process is starting. The acrylic will sink in and it won't look perfect yet, but that will be the base where you can fill it out later. Now I'm going to be grabbing the rest of the fingers. I'm going to start with the longest finger I sculpted. Again, whatever order they were sculpted in, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to sculpt that so it's just slightly above the index finger. Then with the next longest finger, I'm going to sculpt that at the same rate higher than the middle finger. And then going for the pinky, same thing, that's the thinnest or the smallest. That's going to be at the same little uptick further than the ring finger. All of those have glue on the very end of them, and I'm going to hold them in place until they stay. The pinky was being tricky. Once they're all on there to this stage, you're going to need to really anchor them down before you go any farther. So I'm going to be adding some acrylic over the top of the back of the hand. That acrylic will flow over the very tops of those fingers, keeping them in place. That's just a nice little tacking method. You just want to make sure that they do not go anywhere. Now, this is where it gets, to me, this is the fun part. This is like all of that base part is done. You get to do all of the filling in of the details and really make this come to life. So I'm going to grab lots more of my green acrylic and I'm going to be filling in all of the shapes, round them out on both sides of everything of the fingers. So you got these flat fingers and you have to add acrylic to both sides to make them look like they're rounded fingers. And this is one of those designs that you want it to look so sellable, so perfect, so real from every single angle, and look at it from every single angle. So as I'm sculpting, you can see I'm tipping this thing left, right, upside down, right side up. I'm going through it from every single perspective. The one thing I do want to mention is before you get to this point, you want to probably insert a little piece of wire, thin wire, between the thumb and the index finger so that the Grinch can actually hold up the ornament. Element I forgot to do. I did add it in later and you can see how I did that. But if you want to have the foresight to not have to do it quite the way I did, then you're going to want to add in that wire right now. Add the details to the rest of the fingers back and forth. The great thing about the Grinch is that you don't need to add in knuckles because his knuckles are everything on his hands. They're all smoothed out with fur. So you don't have to add those knuckles and some of that extra detail on fingers and hands that can seem a little bit more difficult. The Grinch is all just a little bit softer. I'm going to add some of the detail, like I said, to the squishy stuff on the inside of your hand, to all of the meat on the inside of your hand on your palm. I'm going to do that. I need to add the little knuckles on the very top of his hand, but like the individual fingers, it's just a little more freeform. So if you've never sculpted a hand before and you want to try it out, this would be a great one to do, just because it is, to me, it's a little bit more whimsical. So you have some more freedom to kind of play around with it. Going to keep adding all of my details. Like I said, look at it from all angles, make sure that everything looks rounded out and smooth. You're also going to want to kind of make sure that it's strong. Even if it looks rounded out and smooth, if you look at it and there's some area that looks like it's going to break really easily, add a little more acrylic to it if you need to. On the inside of the thumb, that thumb area, right where the thumb kind of attaches to the palm of the hand, is one of the biggest areas to really thicken up. That's a spot where on anybody's hand, we've got a big muscle right there. So you want to make sure that you fill that out and add a little bit more bulk to it. As you're doing all of these last final details, you may want to consider, depending on how thick your acrylic is, how strong it is, thinning it out using thinner beads so that it kind of floats into the cracks and crevices and smooths out and makes the whole thing look a little bit more continuous and not like different pieces. So if that's something you need to do, that is an option, of course. Now I'm going to grab a clump of black 3D sometimes it's called 3D, sometimes it's called 4D gel, and I'm going to roll that into a ball. It's just like Play-Doh. And that is going to be for my ornament. Now, of course, if you did already have your wire placed into your Grinch, what I would do is I would poke a hole with the wire, and then I wouldn't leave my ornament on there. But since my wire isn't already on in my Grinch hand, I'm going to just leave my ornament on there. So I'm going to round it out, and then I'm going to press the wire in and then smooth it. After that's cured, make sure you rotate it while curing. Then I'm going to apply a coat of a chrome gel. So this is a gel, it's basically a gel top coat that's specifically made so that it holds chrome powder well. And then after that's been cured, same thing, rotate it. I'm going to burnish red chrome powder throughout the entire surface of the ornament. It is so deep and so red and so ornament looking just with that red chrome powder. And then I'm going to make the little cracks on it with some black gel liner. After that's done, I'm going to just highlight the cracks little bits here and there with a white gel liner. Again, curing after each of those colors and then applying a gel sealer over the entire ornament to really make it shiny. I'm going to hold the ornament up to my Grinch fingers, cut off the extra length so it's not too terribly long, make sure it's nice and straight. Hold it up again, flip it over, and then using a very narrow bit, I'm going to carve a crevice for the wire to be glued into my Grinch fingers. Remove dust. Lots of dust always. And then I'm going to just take the tiniest bit of nail glue. I do want to mention that wire and nail glue do not necessarily get along. So if you are going to take the nail glue route, prepare to hold this for a very long time until that glue decides to set. After that does happen, eventually, then you can go ahead and kind of cover up the end of the wire with some more of the green acrylic. Whether or not you take the nail glue route, you're still going to need to prop up that ornament while you're applying the acrylic because nail glue, like I said, does not really agree with wire. Then with some either a metallic gold or a warm gold color acrylic, I'm going to be adding the top of the ornament, the little holder thing that keeps the ornament attached to the wire or whatever hanger you have. I know it has a name, so somebody help me out in the comment section if you are so smart where you can add that for me. And then after that part is done, just going kind of around in a circle, pressing it so that it holds its shape. Then you can add whatever details are left to this that you want to add. For me, I'm going to be highlighting the furry part of my Grinch's coat sleeve with white. I'm just going to take a fairly dry brush and brush white paint over the top of it. That will only pick up on the high areas of the fur coat and really brighten it up and look more dimensional. Then with red paint, I'm going to pat it over the top of the sleeve. I'm not going to brush it. I'm just going to dab it on. That will make it look a little bit velvety and like material. And then for my Grinchy hand, last but not least for the detailing, we're going to just do a dark green and add in shading here and there. It is so enjoyable to me to be on these last final steps of any project like this, doing these final details where there's just subtle things that you can do to bring it to life is by far the most exciting thing because it's just like all this hard work has finally, it's gotten there. You're there. And then after I have those dark lines filled in, I'm going to take a brighter shade of green paint and I'm going to be adding some fur texture to my Grinch hand. So little teeny tiny lines here and there going all over the areas I want to highlight is what's going to give you that fur texture. If that seems like it's too much little lines for you, you can certainly skip it or make a few larger lines to signify those highlighted spots. To me, adding those tiny little lines for that fur texture is probably the most significant detail at the end here because it really makes his hand go from very smooth looking to furry and grinchy. Once you're done, apply some matte top coat over everything besides obviously the ornament that is done. And then that's it. This is so cool. I love the way that it sits up on the nail. It's one of the coolest things I've ever made. And I've said that in a few different videos in the past. And this one really just takes the cake. I am absolutely in love with it. I hope you all are in love with it as much as I am because it is just so cool. So anyways, I hope you like it. I have so many amazing Christmas designs and thoughts planned for this month. So definitely come back and I will see you all next time. Bye.